On a chilly spring evening, the grand ballroom of the Moonlight Hotel shimmered with golden lights and expensive laughter. The air was filled with the soft clink of crystal glasses, the faint notes of a live violin, and the scent of roses mixed with perfume and power. Tonight's event was a private business celebration, where suits talked numbers and champagne flowed like water. Everyone in the room knew who the host was. CEO Shen Yixin. Cold, powerful, rich, the kind of man who never smiled without a reason. But while the city's elite mingled under chandeliers, just outside the banquet hall, a young woman stood quietly, fingertips brushing along the wall as she tried to find her way. Her name was Mu Xiaoxi, and she had been blind since the age of 7. She wasn't supposed to be there. She had come with her cousin, who was working part-time as an event server. But after stepping out to take a call, her cousin never came back. Mu Xiaoxi, unfamiliar with the place and too proud to ask for help, had tried to find the exit herself. Instead, she had somehow wandered into the ballroom, unnoticed in her plain dress and quiet footsteps. No one saw her slip in. No one stopped her. Her fingers brushed the edge of a nearby table, and she heard the faint clinking of a glass, dry. From the walk and flustered, she reached out carefully. Her hand closed around a slender stem. It felt cool and fragile. Just one sip, she thought. What she didn't know was, this wasn't an ordinary drink. It wasn't even supposed to be on that table. It was a 30-year-old French red, personally poured by Shen Yixin's assistant, and placed at the CEO's private seat just moments ago. As the wine touched her lips, something strange happened. It wasn't the taste. It was bitter, woody, and rich. It was the silence that followed, the sudden stillness. The background noise seemed to pause, just for a moment. Across the room, Shen Yixin saw her, the girl with the calm face and delicate features, slowly sipping his wine like it was the most natural thing in the world. Her eyes were open, but unfocused, empty, yet somehow clear. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. And she clearly had no idea where she was. His first instinct? Security. But he didn't raise his hand. Something about her stilled him. Everyone else was too busy talking deals and bragging brands. But Shen Yixin saw one thing. She didn't belong here. And yet, she was the most real person in the room. His assistant noticed. "Sir, should I escort her out?" Shen Yixin's gaze didn't move. No, he watched her put the glass down, lightly wipe her mouth with the back of her hand, then fumble for her cane, only to knock over a silver tray by accident. The sound rang out, sharp and metallic. Every head turned. A waiter rushed over, frowning. "Miss, are you lost?" Before she could answer, Shen Yixin had already started walking. Mu Xiaoxi's hands trembled slightly as she backed away, trying to explain. I'm sorry. I was looking for the exit. I didn't mean to. You drank my wine," a deep voice said, cutting through the noise like a blade. She froze. People stared. Whispers started. I didn't know. I'm sorry. I can pay you back. It's worth 50,000 yuan, he said flatly. But I won't ask you to pay. That made her pause. Then, are you going to call the police? There was a beat of silence. Then, for the first time all night, the cold CEO smiled. Just barely. "No, you're coming with me." She stepped back instinctively. "I really didn't mean to. Relax. I'm not angry." Those words shocked everyone. Shen Yixin? Not angry. Mu Xiaoxi's lips parted, but no sound came. She didn't understand what was happening. Why wasn't he yelling? Why was he smiling? And why was he looking at her like she wasn't just a girl who made a mistake, but someone who mattered? He turned to his assistant. "Cancel my next meeting. Escort her to the garden." "But sir, the board members." "I said cancel," as the assistant blinked in confusion and obeyed. Shen Yichen offered his arm, not out of politeness, but out of instinct. She hesitated, her brows furrowed, then slowly reached out. When her fingers touched his sleeve, something inside him shifted. He didn't know her name. He didn't know why she was here, but he felt something strange and unsettling in his chest, like curiosity, like warmth, like danger. And Mu Xiaoxi, though blind, felt it too. A presence that made her heart beat just a little faster. Not fear, something else. She didn't know that this one mistake would turn her life upside down. She didn't know that the cold CEO, who had never cared for anyone, would start searching for reasons to see her again. And Shen Yichen? He didn't know that. Letting her go would be the hardest decision he'd ever face, because something about her just wouldn't leave his mind. What was it? The innocence? The quiet confidence? Or was it the way she made him forget who he was for a moment and remember what it meant to feel? He didn't have the answer. Not yet, but one thing was certain. This wasn't over. Not even close. The garden behind the Moonlight Hotel was quiet, lit only by soft lanterns and the silver glow of the moon. Mu Xiaoxi sat on a bench, her fingers curled around the edges of her dress. She could hear the rustling of leaves, feel the cool breeze brushing her cheeks, but her heart was racing. She still couldn't believe what had just happened. The man who owned the hotel, the powerful CEO whose name made people nervous, had brought her here without a word of blame. But why? Shen Yichen stood nearby, watching her with unreadable eyes. He hadn't said much since they left the ballroom. His expression was calm, but something inside him felt strangely unsettled. He didn't usually act on impulse, but tonight felt different. There was something about her, the way she sat quietly, not trying to explain herself anymore, not pretending to be someone she wasn't. That drew him in. "Are you always this fearless?" he finally asked. She turned her head slightly, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I'm not fearless. I'm just used to not being seen." That answer surprised him more than it should have. He had expected nervousness or excuses, but her voice was steady, almost peaceful. He sat down beside her. "You didn't come to the party, so what were you doing there?" "My cousin brought me," she replied. "She works events sometimes. Said I could wait in the lounge. I must have taken a wrong turn." He nodded slowly. "And the wine?" She let out a soft laugh. "I didn't know it was yours. I was thirsty. And it smelled nice." The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. She was honest. Refreshingly so. That night, he didn't ask her to leave. He had his driver take her home and insisted she keep the designer shawl one of the staff had offered her. When the air grew colder, she didn't want to accept it, but he told her quietly, "Just take it. Think of it as a memory." She didn't realize then that he'd already asked his assistant to find out everything about her. Mu Xiaoxi lived in a small apartment on the edge of the city, supported herself with freelance piano lessons, and had been blind since an accident. During childhood, her father had passed away years ago, and her mother, overworked and bitter, rarely called. Her world was quiet, filled with routine and music, and she preferred it that way. But even she could tell something was shifting, because Shen Yichen kept appearing. Sometimes it was a casual encounter, bumping into her near the music school she taught at. Other times, it was an anonymous donation to the struggling music center she worked with. She didn't know it was him at first, but his presence, quiet and patient, began slipping into the corners of her life. And just like that, two different worlds started to mix. The CEO, who had everything but no real joy, and the blind girl who had nothing, but never let it make her bitter. It should have ended there, a chance meeting, a brief kindness, but it didn't, because one day, Shen Yichen did something unexpected. He asked her to play the piano for his company's upcoming charity gala. At first, she refused. "I'm not a professional," she said, "and I don't belong in that kind of place." But he looked at her, calm and firm. "You belong anywhere you want to be." And so, she agreed. But behind the scenes, not everyone was happy. Especially not Liu Qianyu, the elegant, ambitious daughter of a business partner who had spent years trying to win Shen Yichen's attention. She had always believed she was the perfect match for him. Beautiful, rich, and educated abroad. She had attended countless events with him, been by his side at meetings, and believed it was only a matter of time before he proposed. So when she saw him escorting a plain, blind girl into the company gala like she was something precious, her heart twisted with jealousy. Who was this girl? Why was Shen Yichen looking at her like that? That night, whispers filled the room. People questioned her identity, her presence. But Shen Yichen ignored them all. He walked beside her with quiet pride, his hand steady on her back, introducing her like an honored guest. Mu Xiaoxi sat at the grand piano, hands trembling slightly. But when her fingers touched the keys, everything else melted away. The room went silent as her music filled the hall. Not flashy, not grand, but pure and hauntingly beautiful. For a moment, Shen Yichen forgot everything else. But the piece didn't last. After the gala, a tabloid photo surfaced. Mu Xiaoxi and Shen Yichen, together in the garden from that first night. The article twisted the story, painting her as a manipulative woman, using her disability for sympathy. Social media exploded with criticism. The board members weren't happy either. Investors questioned the CEO's judgment. Even his own family began pressuring him to distance himself. "Why her?" his mother asked coldly. "She has no background, no vision, no place in this world." He didn't answer. But the worst blow came when Liu Qianyu secretly contacted Mu Xiaoxi and confronted her in private. "You're just a moment of pity for him," she said, her voice sharp like ice. "When he gets tired of the act, he'll drop you like a bad deal." Mu Xiaoxi, hurt but calm, didn't argue. She just left quietly. That night, she didn't return Shen Yichen's calls. And when he finally showed up at her apartment, she didn't answer the door. From the other side, she whispered, "Maybe this is too much. Maybe we're just too different." Shen Yichen stood there in silence, fists clenched, not used to feeling helpless. Because for the first time in his life, he wasn't fighting over money or business. He was fighting for someone's trust, and he didn't know how to win. But he wasn't ready to give up, not yet, because what started as a mistake had become the most real thing in his life. Shen Yichen stood outside her door long after she'd gone quiet. The cold night wind passed over him, but he didn't move. Inside, Mu Xiaoxi sat on the floor, her back against the wall, her heart aching in ways she didn't understand. She wanted to believe in him. But the noise from the world outside, judgments, looks, whispers, felt louder than anything he had said. She didn't doubt his feelings. She doubted whether she could survive the storm they would create together. For days, he didn't call again. And for days, she waited, telling herself it was better this way. That maybe Liu Qianyu was right. That someone like her didn't belong in his world. But when she touched the piano, her music lost its warmth. The notes sounded flat, unsure, just like her heart, until one morning, there was a knock at the door. She opened it slowly, and there, He was. But not alone. He held a small portable piano in one hand, and in the other, a white cane. He handed it to her and said gently, "I've never really understood your world, but I want to." She stood frozen. "I don't care what anyone thinks," he continued. "You were never a moment of pity. You changed how I see everything. You made me want more than just success. You made me want life." She laughed through her tears. "You brought a piano to my doorstep?" He grinned. "I figured if you won't come to the music will come to you." They sat down, right there, in the hallway. He asked her to teach him a simple song. Their laughter echoed through the old apartment building like the sweetest melody. But the world didn't stay quiet for long. News of their reunion spread. This time he didn't hide it. He stood before the press, openly acknowledging his feelings for her. Some called him foolish. Others applauded his honesty. Liu Qianyu, watching the press conference from her father's office, finally realized that no amount of charm or background could force a person to love you. As for Mu Xiaoxi, she was invited to perform at a major music event sponsored by Shen Yichen's company, not as a favor, but because people had heard her music and wanted more. And in that audience sat the same critics who once questioned her worth. But when she played, they said nothing. They just listened. The music said everything. Later that night, Shen Yishen walked with her through the empty streets, his hand wrapped in hers. "You're not just a part of my life," he said. "You're the reason I finally started living." She smiled, tilting her head toward the stars she couldn't see, but always believed were there. "Funny," she said softly. "I was blind, but I think I saw you more clearly than anyone else ever did." They stopped on a quiet bridge, where the city lights shimmered on the water. The world kept moving, but for them, it slowed. There was no need for grand declarations, no need for perfect plans, just two people from different worlds who found a way to meet in the middle. Their story didn't end with glass slippers or sudden miracles. It ended with quiet strength, mutual respect, and the promise of something real. Love, after all, doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be true. And what began as a blind girl accidentally drinking the CEO's wine became the beginning of a love that neither of them ever expected. But both of them were brave enough to fight for.